It's all about how to move the country forward. What kind of steps you will be taking? What about the ones we've taken before? Where are we getting it right? So let's get to Abuja. Makba.
Thank you, Chamberlain. We certainly have a lot to chew on this morning, and Dr. Oke Ikechukwu is going to help us out with that. He is the Executive Director of Development Specs Academy. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily.
Thank you.
Doctor, I just want to ask you, where do you think we are in managing our security? I know that security has been on the front burner for a while. We've seen different developments in that regard. We understand that at the National Economic Council, there's now going to be a committee on security as well, which will be looking at the security situation in the country and tying it to the economic situation in the country as well. Out of that, we've also seen that the federal government is thinking about abolishing the Almajiri system. They are looking at enrolling more children in school, and I think it was the National Security Advisor who said ultimately what they're looking to do is abolish the system. Do you think we've taken enough steps in the regard of security to try and solve the problem?
Well, your question is where are we in security, and I think we are where we should not be in security. If you set up a committee, first, what's the composition of the committee? What will be the impact of that committee on national security? Is the committee actually necessary? You're setting up a committee. Does it then mean that the Armed Forces and the National Security Council as it is has issues? The truth of the matter is that the setting of a committee is, first of all, a vote of no confidence on the national security architecture and framework, and that is not likely to translate into anything in the short or medium or long time. We have a crisis. And during a crisis, if you're very hungry, if you're too weak and you're taken to a hospital into the emergency unit, that's not the time they make bitter leaf soup for you. It takes too long. You wash the bitter leaf and then begin the cooking. They give you some kind of intravenous material. That's not what's happening. So I think it's good as it may sound. It's another indication, something you can point and say, oh, we are not idle. We're doing something. We set up a committee.
Yeah, but you know, the National Security Council doesn't exactly have the state governors on it. I know that this committee is being headed by a governor, and I know that the National Economic Council has all the governors on it. If there's now a link, or they're looking at the link between, the state government, security, and also the federal government, don't you think that there ought to be a place where they're rubbing minds together?
It's clearly an improvement, a necessity, something that should have come long before now. But the point is for us not to expect too much from it in the short term. There's an emergency to be dealt with. The likely benefit I see from the committee is that you probably now have direct reports from the governors. It will probably now be possible for the governors talking together and in concert with the federal government to acknowledge that a chief security officer cannot have as police commissioner somebody who doesn't report to him. So it seems to me on the positive side that it will lead to a review. Progressively, if you hear the same voices saying the same things in your presence as a joint committee, and these are the presumed chief security officers of the 36 states, you're bound to take the matter much more seriously. But what that will then mean is that the members, say the state governors, they should also expand the compass of their security committees. In many of the states, it's made up of the police, the DSS, and some of them do not include the prisons. If you include the prisons, regular reporting from the prisons will give every state governor the caliber of criminals in the prisons in his state. If you find, for instance, from report that 80% of the prisoners sent from wherever are kidnappers or whatever, it enables you to report. So you then, by the time you get to the new committee now, you have a greater cocktail of data that will guide you on the texture of criminality in the country. That has been missing. We've been running an Abuja government which thrives on announcement. The president has directed them to stop the kidnapping on Kaduna Road. This is purely delusional. So I agree with you that yes, the very fact of creating a concert where all the active players will be on the table will help. And it will also give the governors greater ability to control the diverse forces in their states. If you go to the Southeast, for instance, assuming those who are calling for, if you like, independence, assuming you say, okay, Southeast become independent, The first thing that will happen is that IPOB will be at war with MASOB, all these other groups. So it just might happen that this will be a step towards eventually agreeing on state police.
Well, while we wait for that, do you really think that that is a necessity, though? State police?
At the end of the day, it's a question of nomenclature. Policing is always effective when those being policed are policed by people who know them. You know, if you take the texture, if you take the profile of people who have been police officers in most of the Southeast states, you rarely find any Southeasterner there. Which is not an issue one way or another. But the point is that state police, the concern is it will be abused by governors. For how long? And in what context? So I believe we will lead up to it, but you can't just jump into it. It will have to progressively evolve. And I think that this committee might be, because if the committee is meeting, all the governors are seeing each other, they're talking with the federal government, there'll be a kind of tempering of concerns. We're all concerned about security. And to that extent, it will be easy to create a joint template.
That is what is happening at the federal level. I mean, even though the police, we have seen them parade suspects. I think only recently they said they paraded about 500 suspected kidnappers from different parts of the country. On the ground, in terms of execution, are we seeing enough steps being taken to allay the fears of Nigerians that indeed the state is still capable?
No, not enough. If you parade 500 suspects, my first question would be, where are you keeping them? That's a problem. Number two, is the police equipped to police the Federal Republic of Nigeria? The answer is no. Both in terms of number of personnel and, arms and ammunition, in addition to the fact that the very activities of the state is criminalizing a lot of people. The political leadership is investing a lot in thuggery and activities you can describe as inappropriate behavior. And the policeman you're talking about.
When you say they're certainly not doing it, you know, I mean, are they doing it frontally, so to speak? When you say they're arming thugs, for instance, or they are encouraging thuggery, is that as a result of the political system which we run, or is that as a policy of state?
No, certainly as a deviant policy of state. The policy of state is security, public welfare, and the rest of it. But you find that within it, you have actors who are so strong as to appear to be mini-states on their own. And so the instruments of state that ought to contain them do not. And so they recruit thugs and do all sorts of things. Now, the point is, if as a politician, my reflexes are wrong, I'm mentoring a younger generation to follow my path. That's part of the crisis of the police. And so criminality is increasing, and the ability to cope is decreasing. And also you have the police also. Are they well paid? If any of them dies, what happens to the family? You see, a holistic conception or approach to what needs to be done, its absence is what will make an officer run away, knowing that he doesn't know what will happen to his family if he dies. Is what will make somebody you're talking patriotism about say, no, let me collect money and vote. After all, the one we did last year, we didn't see the man until this election. So it's within the context of that that I think that it may not be entirely fair to see the police, oh, you're not doing enough. No. The current IGP, for instance, you can see his approach has been very professional. He's thorough. He now gives updates on what the police does or fails to do every month. And as far as I can see, it will appear that he is a very seasoned and experienced officer who just may help us rescue the Nigerian police force. But funding is an issue. The old culture of handling resources in a certain manner is an issue. The roadblocks are also there. They are still there. Facilitated by the police, encouraged by the people, and all the rest of it. All these are indications of a polity that has not matured enough to the level of right and wrong in a fundamental sense.
Well, there are certain reasons why we elect our leaders. Security, yes, is one of them, but to also create opportunities to better our lives are another. And with high unemployment rates, it is getting even more difficult for young people, it would seem, to better their lives. Do you think that there is enough being done in the regard of job creation, both at the federal and state levels, to create opportunities for young people?
Well, the Senate President said, I think yesterday, that 10 million Nigerian children are out of school.
That's figure we've been banding for a while now.
So I don't know where he got that from. That figure has been around for 12 years. It's factually incorrect. If you check the census figures for 2005, you'll find that at the primary level, at that time, there ought to be 42-point-something million children in school. At the secondary level, there ought to have been 33.9. But the census figures following in 2006 show that at the secondary school level, more than 22 million children were out of school. At the primary level, at the secondary level, instead of 33.9, you had 6.4. So with this kind of statistics by those who are leading us, you can see there can be no meaningful planning. And also within the same period of this school census, it was confirmed. We had the figures in the Federal Ministry of Education show that we had 9,700 secondary schools. The school census confirmed 14,543 secondary schools. So nearly 50% of the schools were not on the radar. So how are you developing your human capital? You can then understand why beggars have increased in numbers. Yes, the nation is, things are very bad. There are murderers all over the place, there's kidnapping, but let's not begin to think it's an issue arising from the current government of Buhari. No. 20 years of democracy, isn't it? Look at the population of beggars and their age bracket. Most of them are between 3 years of age and 14. That means they were born during the PDP years. That means they didn't go to school. Things have worsened quite all right, but the truth of the matter is that it's a leadership and elite failure. And the bulk of them are from the north. What party was in power in the north? You get. And it's not even a question of what party, because the politicians switch, they're all the same. Then you come to the level of kidnapping. Also, they fall within an age bracket of 16 and 35, some of them 40. What happened to them in the last 20 years? So we're harvesting the failure of the leadership elite to develop the nation's human capital and create a proper security structure. If you look at within the same period, a lot of money was also spent on security. So first, you're not developing human capital. Second, you're budgeting on security and not spending it on security. Thirdly, you're expanding the privileges of the rich. Fourthly or fifthly, national infrastructure is not being developed. Please tell me what other incentive you need for criminality, and you have wrong role models. And this, you don't need to go to the moon to confirm that. We are in Abuja right now. Between Abuja and Kaduna is about 2.5 hours drive. For anybody who has lived in Abuja and has been, commuting in the last 20 years, simple question. The road from Abuja to Kaduna, has it been totally functional in the last 20 years? The answer is no. There's always been bad patches. The road from Abuja to Lokoja, the same thing. The road if you take from Lokoja to Ayamba, the section of the road that had been bad before 1999, as I speak, is still bad. If you pass through Kogi to go to Lagos, the section that you nearly pass through people's houses is untouched. You want to take southeast to Benue through Makurdi or Tupa area, it's not a road, and we're talking 20 years. And you want to do Port Harcourt to Enugu. There's never been a time that stretch of road was fully functional. You say, okay, no, let's do Onitsha to Enugu, same express, federal. All the same, all over the Federal Republic of Nigeria. 20 years. And trillions have been spent on all the headings on which there's no record of performance. What do you expect? And then you come out on TV and make speeches. So when we say we are looking at the state of the nation, let's not pretend that the problems we have now arose because the government has been in place for 4 years. Certainly the government is not doing well, no question about that. And I suspect if PDP had taken over, PDP would still have been able to paper it over a lot more successfully than the current government. So it's not really proof of performance, but greater ability to be devious. So let's make the distinction. And so you come around to the question of jobs. Job requires ability. If I have no skill, you can't pay me for anything except as a thug to carry your bag, or I watch when you're not watching, I steal your purse. Now, we've created more criminals and more deviants than citizens. That means we've created people who do not buy in and cannot buy in even if they want to, onto any national vision. They don't understand the concept of a nation, but they understand the need to survive from day to day. And states, when they speak of job creation, what is it? A governor, some 5 years ago or less, created, empowered the youth, with each of them with a small box for polishing shoes. Another one bought wheelbarrows. What's the nexus between job creation and education? A governor spends 2.2 billion on education. You go and check, he refurbished and repainted classrooms and built new ones. What did he spend on teachers? What does he give the best graduating student to make students compete to achieve academic excellence? Federal government, I think in the last or second before the last Federal Executive Council before it was dissolved, the Buhari government approved 4.7 billion for 7 unity schools, model schools all over the country. You know, they will be the best. And I ask, what is happening to the 104 secondary schools, unity colleges we had? They were created for national unity, to create a new culture of Nigerians who school everywhere and they're part of. They're all in total disrepair, being managed by the parents and the old students. Take 4.7 billion, spread it among those schools. You've got your model schools all over the place. So people mistake procurement contracts and job for the boys for investment in education. So if you say you're not doing it, they say, no, no, no. Have you forgotten we spent 4-something billion? All of it has no bearing. Your children are hungry. You want to show you're taking care of your children. You say, oh, have you forgotten I spent 50,000 painting the house. I refurbished the kitchen. I tiled the compound, and everybody is clapping. Did you buy food? Assuming you bought food, did you buy gas? That is the lack of strategic focus and the absence of a strategic engagement template, and that is why the state of the nation is the way it is.
Well, I know that I have a follow-up to that in terms of, you know, the fact that some young people, despite all that we are seeing in the country, despite the discouraging environment, they are still making something of their lives. They are still coming up with innovation. They're looking for things around the country. Social media is a veritable platform for them to market what it is that they're doing, and they're making headway. Now, we're beginning to see that the CBN is looking for ways to see how they can support those kinds of people. I think only yesterday we heard that the CBN is looking to release the first tranche of monies for the entertainment sector. And I think, yeah, the entertainment sector, so movie makers, music makers, and things of the sort. What sort of effect do you think that would have on job creation? Is that the way to go, for instance?
It is part of the way to go. It's a good move, but it must be holistic. And I will take it at 2 levels. Please, as they budget for entrepreneurship and promotion of innovation, they should also make provision for values orientation and citizenship education. The fact that I'm an entrepreneur, I can actually, with all that's coming from this CBN, I, as a young person, will adopt a fundamentally predatory attitude towards the state. Oh, they're going to give us another one. When I collect, I go away. So I make my films, and I don't do what the American will do, which is to put an American flag here, establish a situation where the police responds quickly. Citizenship is not created because you're spending money on citizens. It's by a perception of a common national goal driven by all the things done by the state. Yes, the movie industry. 2004 was the one who took Nigeria's delegation to the 2004 New York Film Festival. Same year, I took the Nigerian delegation to Citizenship Film Festival in South Africa. And all the actors, all the big people were there. Now, what was the aim? More than any other minister before him, Chikelo put his life on the line for the movie industry. Obasanjo gave him specifically an extra budgetary provision for the sector. Of course, the details don't matter. The point is that ability to access it was limited. When, for instance, 100 million was made available, broken at that time into 2 million to produce small documentaries, it was to go to the sector, everybody. It was made available. Only 2 people, Amaki Igwe and Ale Balogu, were the only ones who came forward to begin with. And they were also very, very good. And they were the ones who, by the time we were leaving the ministry, the money was sitting there, 98 million. They started writing in the paper the money had been eaten. Emeka said he has no need to respond. What did he do? Film Corporation was looking for a certain machine that will enable you to convert video to reel. And that's how the thing was given to the sector. Even private trainers of movie makers, that's how it went. Now, leading up to this matter, yes, it will lead to job creation because you're going to have makeup artists to increase in number, floor managers, prop managers, then actors and actresses, and then what you call training schools. So it's a good investment, but it will just be money spent. Because remember, under Jonathan, I think Konjiwala was the minister, the first tranche was it 3 billion? to the same sector, and it was all what came out of it. You cannot tell us you're promoting job when all you're doing is enabling people earn income, but without making them citizens. That element of integration has to happen. The National Orientation Agency should be enabled to do its work. So when you're investing in these things, create a component of it for values orientation.
Let's quickly take a question then from my colleague, Ayo.
Dr. Ikechukwu, you gave some very mind-blowing and very troubling statistics the other time, and it underscored the fact that we either don't plan with good data or we don't even have the data at all. What do you think is responsible for this paucity of planning with data? Is it because we do not have the capacity to gather data, and what do we need to do so that we can project the way we ought to? Because you've talked about some 20 years ago, 30 years ago. In another 20 years or 30 years, it's going to get worse if we don't solve the problem.
Oh, to begin with, the political economy of the Nigerian state has converted it into a criminal enterprise such that the institutions of state that ought to contain how you and I behave service interests of powerful people. What to do is that if you're setting up a government, you must set up a template of what you intend to do, with a focus on three things: citizen welfare, no record of expenditure; security, not expenditure on the procurement of security apparatus; and then leadership responsibility. In other words, if people begin to behave like me, would we have a polity? And I'll take them one at a time. In terms of expenditure, record of expenditure, I think there was a time, 2006, 2007, there was a bill, there was a, what do you call it, a council memo to spend 2-point-something billion in putting, in computerizing the federal government colleges all over the country. The serving minister then had a look at it, was uncomfortable. On further analysis, it became clear to us that there's something unclear. So Obi stepped it down. To cut a long story short, out of the 2-point-something billion for making, who will object to computerizing schools? Less than 200 million was actually for computers. The rest were generators, all kinds of things. And in all of these, there was no budget for diesel. So you see that a procurement contract had been given to friends, and it will be evidence of money being spent on human development. And also, governments come in and pick up the data, lousy most of the time, from international agencies and activists who talk without verifying anything, and then begin to plan on it. Look at our Senate President saying yesterday that 10 million Nigerian children are out of school. Where is he from? How many children are out of school in Kano and Kaduna alone? So these are facts you need to deal with. When you then operate with that kind of data that's purely imaginary, you plan for what does not exist, if you plan at all. And so you record your expenses. Somebody gets up and says, we are not spending enough on education. The international best practice is that you spend so and so percentage of the budget. Indolent analysis, for a simple reason. When you check, if you take off the federal government actual allocation to education, check the money that goes to education from Education Trust Fund, the tax on education, the support from agencies like Ford Foundation, Frederick Ebert Foundation, and MacArthur. If you put it all together, it's a massive percentage of the budget. I remember sometime in the past when Nasser had taken on P2B, that part of what he was doing was not spending so and so percentage on education. Whereas a calculation of the government's expenditure on education, including partnership support, came close to 40% of the budget. So planning is not possible when delusional statistics are in place.
So, that is certainly very true. Planning might be a little difficult, but I'm just wondering, in all that you have given, there's very little room for hope. Are you very hopeful?
Yes, I am.
You are?
Extremely
What
so.
gives you hope?
What gives me hope is the fact that there's how far you can go on the wrong road. Things will come around. We are talking about Ruga, farmer-header clashes, priests inflicting themselves on members of their congregation and all sorts of things. No, you see, human development in society does not arise because somebody preaches. Abuse does not stop because people are preaching to you. You get to a point where it bursts. And we have a leadership class that's feeding fat and non-nourishing environment, so creating the termites that will eat them up. Now, is it that there's a reevaluation of the environment if they want to survive, or a cataclysm? Now we are headed for a cataclysm because many more are criminalized, and they are reacting to that. So the thing to do is to quickly regroup and re-equip them so that they drop the equipment. They are tooled now as criminals. If you don't retool them, then that's what. So there is absolute hope, because even in confusion, it can only lead to better health. You eliminate some things and some people, and life goes on.
Well, it's a fine place to leave it. On that note of hope, we have to thank you very much for coming on this morning. Dr. Oke Ikechukwu is the Executive Director of Development Specs Academy. Sunrise Daily continues in a moment on another controversial matter. Please stay with us.